Hi, everybody. It's Gabby. So, I wanted to come on and answer a question I get all the time. So, people ask me all the time, how did I get started being a professional psychic? So, there's a couple different parts to this question. One is like, how did I know I was psychic? And that kind of leads to how did I develop my gifts? And then the second part is, how did I start doing this professionally? So, we're going to talk about it in that order. How did I know I had this gift? So when I was young, I often knew things before they happened. And I remember becoming aware of it when my mom called me one time. I didn't grow up with my mother. I didn't even meet her until I was in elementary school, so totally different story. So she just randomly called me up one time and was asking me, she's like, do you sometimes know things before they happen? Or like if someone's showing you cards, do you know what it's going to be before you see it? And I was like, actually, yes. But I hadn't thought about it. I just thought everybody had this like way of knowing things. And so that conversation stuck in my head. And it's so funny because when we're kids, we always want to think we're special, right? Like, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But especially as a fairly like emotionally neglected kid, I was like, oh, really jumping on the idea that I was special in some way. And because I was aware, I was a little too smart for my own good, because I was aware that that was like a common psychological pitfall of childhood, I then discounted the fact that maybe my mom was pointing out that there was something special. Now, do I believe everybody has some form of psychic gift? Probably. Do I think a lot of people can hone it? Definitely. So I'm definitely not trying to say that as an adult I think I'm special. I just think that it really appeals to us as kids, but then we start rejecting it because we think, oh, that can't be true. You know what I mean? So I think that a lot of people go through that process where as a child, they notice that they have something that other people don't have, or that they see the world in like a different way. And then life trains it out of us. And then because we are aware of that kind of magical thinking is supposedly not real, we just really push it away, basically. So that's kind of some of the psychology behind it. The other thing I would say was a big moment for me in childhood was I did have what I would now understand is a visitation of some kind. As a kid, I thought it was a dream, but it was a dream that really stayed with me throughout my whole childhood, adulthood. Like, as I think of my childhood, one of the biggest memories that comes to me is this dream I had. And I was very young. My dad was briefly married to somebody who was not my mom, so my stepmom, and we lived in this like big house, the only time I lived in a big house until I was an adult. And there was this like being of light that was coming up the stairs, and it was coming for me. And I remember being like equally terrified, but also knowing that it probably didn't mean me any harm and that it was related to me in some way. So it was probably like an ancestor spirit or something. But as a kid, for some reason, my brain translated it as there's an alien on the stairs coming to get me. So it wasn't a nightmare though. Like I woke up and I was like a little bit scared, but it didn't have that feeling of a nightmare, like that true like terror feeling you get with an actual nightmare. I didn't have that. And so this stayed with me my whole life as like a special moment, like a significant moment, I should say. And I now realize that it was a visitation from some sort of spirit or entity that, did not actually mean me any harm. But a lot of reasons we react with fear is because it's, unknown. It's approaching us like when we're in a vulnerable state, when we're sleeping. And it's easy to feel a little bit freaked out by that. And now that I've worked with a lot more energies and spirits and, I've done a lot of studying and work in this area, the fear decreases the more you know, and the more you know how to communicate with them, and like vice versa. Anyway, so I'd say those were like my two like pivotal child moments where I kind of realized that I knew things. And then as an adult, before I had my spiritual reawakening, as I like to say, not awakening, but reawakening, I did notice that like when I was playing those games in Vegas where you have to like pick the things, the mini games, like I would know which slot machines might hit, not the big ones. Like I would never know that one was going to, hit $100,000, but on a smaller scale, I would know which ones were ready and which ones weren't. And when you get the mini games, I would know like which things to pick to get like some of the jackpot amounts. Anyway, so I also realized that as a consultant, I had a lot of answers that other people didn't have. And for a long time, I thought I was just really smart. So it's so funny how ego can show up in different ways and like mask things from us. And yes, I am pretty smart. Like, I'm not going to say I'm not, but I do think that a lot of times some of the things I knew were because I have claircognizance, not just because I could put 2 and 2 together and get 17 and other people couldn't. You know what I mean? Which is kind of how it felt a lot of the times. So I was aware of that. And then I would say that when my spiritual reawakening hit, that's when I really started to accept that all of these things meant something. That all these things that had happened in my childhood and all these things that happened in adulthood, where I knew things that, you know, other people didn't know, which frankly, by the way, other people resented me for in my professional career. Like, they literally would accuse me of hiding information from them because I knew things they didn't. So they'd be like, you didn't tell me that happened in the meeting. I'm like, bro, we were in the same meeting. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it actually like plagued me for a long time because I didn't realize it, and I didn't realize other people didn't know the things that I knew. So it did cause me some problems, I will say that. But when I had my spiritual reawakening, that is when I really started to like put all this together and be like, oh my gosh, this is like a thing. So for me, my spiritual reawakening started with this dream I had. And it was like while I was getting divorced. And again, things like this tend to happen with significant life shifts and life changes of some kind, right? And again, that is a transition time in your life, getting divorced, getting married, things like that. Hecate appeared to me. So I'm explaining that transitional time because she is the goddess of the crossroads, but life crossroads, you know, big decisions, liminal points. But again, especially these like transition points in your life, she's more likely to show up during those times because that is one of her areas that she's responsible for. And especially if you consider that she's also maiden mother crone, like huge life transitions as we move through different life stages are also big draws for her. So going through a bunch of stuff at the same time, like, you know, that's going to be a big Hecate moment. Anyway, she showed up to me in a dream. I love this dream so much. It's very personal and very significant. But in the dream, there was this feast. And so I was standing outside of this feast, and it was full of like older women and like all different like shapes and sizes. But definitely it was really interesting. I was so desperate to be included in this dream. Like, I was wanting so badly to join this line of women going through this like food buffet. Everybody brought something and there was a line to get in it. It's not at a restaurant. It wasn't in a building. It was like open forum, but it was still very much like there was this line and everybody was contributing something. And I was standing there and my hands were empty. And I knew I wasn't supposed to join in the line. I knew I wasn't invited. I knew that wasn't my place. And I just stood there feeling, you know, like this is something I want to be included in, but I haven't brought anything. And then this little old woman approached me, like itty bitty tiny, and I'm 5'3", and she was like much littler than me. So she approaches me and she basically tells me that I'm not ready. Not that it isn't for me, but that I'm not ready. And so the message was I needed to get myself ready. I needed to do some work in the material realm. And when I woke up, I realized that that was Hecate visiting me in her crone form and saying, if you want to participate in this community of, you know, educated, experienced women, if you want to join in on the fruits of this work, you need to do the work, was the message. Like, very powerful message. So that was my spiritual reawakening. And that is also when I woke up and I was like, I just had this recipe for like a ritual oil for Hecate in my head. This was years ago. This is when I first started making it. And obviously now I've turned it into something that, you know, I love, and, you know, you can buy my Hecate oils, etc. But that is where that recipe came to me, and when I also started making oils. But basically the message was, if you want to be part of this community, you need to start doing the work, and you need to start building your practice and learning and educating yourself and building your own craft. You have to bring something to the table, right, in order to be included. Very powerful message. And it's not a message of, it's not anything negative. It's literally saying, if you want the rewards, you need to do the work, which I appreciate. And I just hadn't really thought of, you know, devoting myself to spiritual work. So at that point, I knew that there was a spiritual path for me. And again, this is a couple of years ago. And this is a huge part of the story of why I'm doing the work, because after that, I gave myself permission to pursue these interests that I had previously thought were unproductive or out there. It's like, no, I have had real experiences throughout my life, and I just had a specific call to action from this very powerful entity. Even if I hadn't identified her as Hecate, I knew this was a very powerful, message and entity that was speaking to me. It was intentional. This was not just a dream. Like, it was very clear to me. So I immediately started buying books and studying and watching YouTube videos and just really educating myself. And I've spent years since then educating myself. And I think I was really lucky, and a lot of women don't have this luxury, but I was living alone and I didn't have to worry about anybody's judgment. And my partner now is very supportive of everything I'm doing, by the way. But at the time, I think I would have held back from this, being so all in on this exploration if I hadn't lived alone, if I had a partner who's watching me build altars in my bedroom, which would be our bedroom. You know what I mean? Being by myself was a privilege, and it gave me a lot of freedom to explore without judgment, without self-editing, and without worrying, again, about what other people think about what I'm doing, which is, I think, another reason we hold back. Now, at the time, I had this dream. I had a lot of other things going on. But I had this other big tower moment happen in March of 2024, which is when I was laid off from my job, which some of you heard me talk about before. And I loved what I was doing. I was in corporate consulting. I was a senior leader in my consulting company. I loved client work, and I'd been doing this for decades, and I really loved it, but I got laid off. And I started a business doing kind of business coaching, business consulting with a friend of mine. And it just wasn't satisfying me. I got to the point where I realized, no, I'm still doing this for other people, which is what I'd been doing in my career. This is not actually my calling. So I took the opportunity to really spend a lot of time thinking about, what is my calling? What do I actually want to do? I'm believing different things than I've ever believed in my life before about balancing the physical, mental, emotional, and the spiritual, finding a new way of living. I believe so strongly in this. I don't want to be spending my time teaching other people how to live a life that I don't believe in anymore. That corporate life, I just don't. It's not fulfilling. It's not real. It's not what matters. So yes, this is the part where we start talking about how I started doing this professionally, what I'm doing to actually support myself being a professional psychic. So I'd been collecting tarot decks. I loved how they look. I loved how they felt. I would do occasional card pulls for myself, but I wasn't going all in on being a tarot reader because there's so many other parts of my practice that I was focused on in my own craft, my own spiritual connection. Tarot was, frankly, a small part of that for me. But I had amassed this huge collection of tarot decks. And my sister told me that people have whole YouTube channels where they just show and review tarot decks. So I started another YouTube channel and I started doing that, and it was kind of fun. But it also felt like it was fun, but it wasn't exactly right. And so I made a few TikToks like that where I was showing off decks. And then one day I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do some readings and film myself doing some readings and post them on TikTok and see what happens. And they blew up. They got popular so fast. So I started doing that in late November of 2024. And as of June, I know it's July 2nd when I'm filming this, but as of today, I've got 63,000 followers. But between late November to late June, it was 63,000 followers. I'm that's really amazing growth. I'm so lucky. I'm so fortunate. And I'm so grateful for the community who supported and, followed me, and the community we're still building, basically. But yeah, that's crazy growth. And so I did start doing general readings when I started doing my TikTok readings. And then I switched to the zodiac readings. I tried one or two. I was no, I want to do a reading for Virgo. I want to do a reading for Sagittarius. And those were what really picked up. So I immediately switched. I only did a handful, I think, of general readings, before I tried the zodiac based ones, and those blew up. And I was realizing as I was making the videos, I'm like, this is fun. Like, I really want to help people. Like, I am a service Virgo, and I really, what I do has to help people. Like, I know that is my calling, is to help people. But also, like, I want to do things I enjoy and I believe in service to other people. And I would make these videos, and I realized every day I'm excited to sit down and do my tarot readings. I'm excited to sit down and make my tarot videos. I'm excited to sit down and talk about the spiritual work that I do. And I'm genuinely passionate about that in a different way. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm doing it for other people. It feels like I'm doing this for all of us, me included, you know? So once I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, every day I'm so excited to sit down and film my TikToks. Like, it's easy for me because I love it, you know? And because I'm so grateful for my gift, and I'm so grateful for my spirit guides who've made this easy for me. Does that make sense? And I realized I don't want to work on my other channel where I was doing, you know, stuff about like business skills and business coaching. I realized I was at the point where I was like making myself do that, and I was enjoying the psychic videos. So here we are 6-7 months later. That's still what I enjoy. And right away after I started my TikToks, like within, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, even once I started doing readings on TikToks, people were asking me to do private readings for them. So I quickly set up my website. I still haven't gone through and fully revamped it because I just spent a couple hours putting up a website where people could purchase readings from me. And I had purchased readings from other TikTok psychics before, so I was aware of the process. That probably made it a lot easier for me, to be honest, because I knew kind of how it worked and like what to do, because I'd purchased some of them myself and I'd been following other psychics for a while. So I got my website up and running, and people started buying readings. And ever since then, I've been like expanding what I have on there. So I have readings, I have consultations, I have coaching packages. People tend to buy individual coaching or consultation sessions. Like, nobody started buying the packages yet, which is a bummer for me, because like packages are great, obviously for me, but I know they're pretty expensive and a commitment. Also, I go deep in my consultations and coaching sessions, and so people tend to get like a few months worth of answers out of one session. So like, I'm not creating a demand where people need a package, if that makes sense, because I'm like really giving them everything they need in like one session. So that's not like, it's not great for me because I can't sell packages, but it's the right thing to do. And that's just how I work. And people love the sessions, and I love hearing people's stories. So that's how I got started doing this. It's one of those things where it's like every overnight success takes years and years of work. Like, when people say that, you're like, that looks different on different people. It could have been I was grinding at my TikTok for a few years before it became successful. That wasn't what happened. But what I was doing was working on my spiritual gifts for years, and I was consuming similar content for years, and I had other YouTube channels, so I knew how that worked. I had tried making other TikTok accounts, none of which were successful, but I knew how that worked, and I knew what wasn't successful. So all of that work you do leading up to your overnight success counts. It's still work, it's still preparation, it's still learning. So I just want to remind everybody that every overnight success story really is built on a foundation of the experiences that got you there and the work that you put in. This was probably my like 4th or 5th TikTok channel that I had, or account, I guess we don't say channel, that I'd created, and none of the other ones really picked up and gained momentum, and this one did. Now on YouTube, my growth has been significantly slower for a number of reasons, which I understand, right? But since TikTok is what's working for me, that's where I put most of my energy. And then I've, a couple months ago made the decision that yes, my Mystic Moon Rising YouTube would have slower growth, and that was okay. My priority is TikTok. But given that, that means I can use this YouTube to experiment with doing more educational content and talking about other spiritual topics, whereas you don't have the freedom to do that on TikTok. And I'll make a whole video comparing them from like a business and content creation perspective, because there's so much I've learned in the last year, because I do have a successful YouTube channel. It hit 55,000 subscribers in less than 6 months. Like, I know how to do it basically. And then had the same success with a different niche on TikTok. So I'll do a whole video comparing those, but I'll put that on my business channel. But for this YouTube, like I said, I can experiment with doing educational content and like doing more spiritual, like broad content. once you find a successful niche in TikTok, you have to stay in that niche on that account. Otherwise, your other videos are going to bomb and it confuses the algorithm. Like, so TikTok does a great job boosting the algorithm in the niche that you're in. But if you try and like broaden at the wrong time or in the wrong way, you can actually like tank it. So I'm not willing to risk that, since that is where I'm getting most of my revenue, is through TikTok videos and through the readings that are purchased by my TikTok followers. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So that's how I got started doing this, and I love it. And, you know, there's like pros and cons, obviously, to doing this work. And I'm doing a series I did start on TikTok where it's like what it's like to do this work. And then also on my Patreon, I do a lot more behind the scenes content, like more like raw, authentic content. Like I even did like a no makeup video, which is crazy for me because, you know, I love my makeup. So those are other ways to see like more content if you're interested, is to become a paid Patreon supporter, and then you get access to more behind the scenes content and more other things I'm doing. Participate in the workshops, and I do mention the workshops in my TikTok. Subscribe to my newsletter. So if you're ever like, Gabby, is there one place where I can find out all the different stuff you're doing? Subscribe to my newsletter on my website. I'll put the link down in here. I also do in-person classes at the local crystal store that I partner with, and she sells my oils, so I don't have to deal with like shipping and operations. She does all of that. She's amazing. I love Tracy at DFW Crystals. Shout out to Tracy. So I do in-person classes there, and she sells all of my oils, and she even sells like my books. So you guys know I have like my workbooks that I sell and like my candle magic book and everything. So I ordered a bunch of physical copies that she sells in her shop. So you can buy them through my website, but they have to be printed and shipped. If you buy them through DFW Crystals, she has them in stock and she ships out very, very quickly. So it's much faster for you guys. Okay, well, I hope that helps. Subscribe to the newsletter, because then you'll hear about all the different classes and all the different opportunities. And then if you just, you know, want to support me, thank you. You can become a Patreon supporter. I love all my supporters. There's 3 different tier options at very different price points. So, you know, whatever you can or what makes sense for you. And then also, like I said on there is behind the scenes content. And I also give coupons and discounts for readings and for classes and workshops, the digital ones, not the in-person ones. Okay, so yeah, if you want more of this content, let me know. If you have other questions about how I got started or like how I work with the gift, let me know. But the divination and channeling workshop this Sunday, I go really deep on like how it works, what it is, how to hone your gifts, how to unlock your gifts if you need to unlock them, and really get into specifics on tarot and oracle. So highly recommend that workshop. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.